He's not in the PSL. He's at the Club World Cup. Where are your champions? Where are your challengers?
In Spain. Prepping.
At the Club World Cup.
Like the Barcelonas of this world.
Like the Club World Cup.
Like the Liverpools of this world. But now some of us have got better things to do with our time.
Better things to do with your time.
To prep us.
Then try to go be world champion.
Then fatigue our players further and start poorly.
All right. We just come from the winter solstice, which is the longest night of the year down here in the southern hemisphere, and it might be a long night, long days, long life for Chuck because of what we're going to be talking about. My name is Jay. How you doing, Chuck? What up?
Good, man. What could be a long day for me? But United's not playing. Season is over. So there's nothing to pull me down. As far as I last check, I'm World Test Championship champion as a South African. So that's a sharp done. But we'll see.
Well, let's actually put that to the test. Let's put that to the test, all right? Orlando Pirates. Last week, we spoke about the fact that reports had suggested that Rulani was in talks to be the coach of Orlando Pirates, returning there. But we have official confirmation from Orlando Pirates Football Club themselves that they've hired a new man. Orlando Pirates do have a coach coming in after the departure of Jose Rivero, Chuck, and it is Abdeslam Ouaddou, the former Maruma Gallants man. How are we feeling? How are we feeling about this appointment? You are the Pirate supporter here. How are you feeling, man?
It's a little underwhelming, to be honest with you, because with the names that were being rumored, Peter Musimani, Rulani Mokwenas, you thought to yourself, okay, we're looking at, if I could say, with all due respect, upper echelon managers in terms of what they've achieved with their respective clubs, right? Peter with Supersport and primarily why he's a big name now. Sundowns, likewise with Rulani, right? And you think to yourself, after having won the cups and having come relatively close, if we can say that, to Sundowns in the league, or making it a bit of a race, I think that's more honest. You thought to yourself then, if we get Rulani, who's a tried and tested winner in the league, if somehow we land Peter Musimani, that gets us even more closer. So I was not looking. I was not even hearing in Kamala Abdeslam or Ouaddou. So I wasn't even looking or expecting that. So it's a bit of an anticlimax in terms of that's who you get, especially with the rumors floating around, Jay, in terms of Rulani is close. It's just a matter of assistant managers. Ngazi could be in the way. But Ngazi keeps his job, and we've got Ouaddou. And, man, I wasn't keeping tabs on him, wasn't watching him. You don't tend to see or watch closely in terms of what Maruma Gallants are doing, unless it's Msendami. Then you want to see in terms of what do they do and what does he perform like. But so that club and that manager's appointment, not looking too closely. But when you look back, Jay, in retrospect, he's the guy in his first game in charge of Gallants beat Pirates 1-0. He's the guy who got Gallants all the way to the semis. So he has done good in terms of progressing Maruma Gallants to the tune of finishing 10th. So it's respectable for Gallants to finish 10th, number one. So good job there. But I don't know, man. It was an unknown commodity when Ribeiro came. But you think to yourself, maybe he's from Spain. Maybe we'll do a bit of a Zimbabwe thing. But I completely don't know. With this manager from Gallants, I'm less optimistic. But I've been proven wrong on so many accounts when it comes to Pirates managers. We've come to learn who they are as they were in the helm. And we've gotten trophies or victories. And so I hope I'm wrong. But I saw an interview, Robert Marawa, and he does conduct himself well. He does speak clearly in terms of his ideas and how he wants to simplify things. But is this a step up, or is this what we need at this point in time? I don't quite think so, Jay. Don't quite think so.
Hey, yeah, no, Chuck. This one came out of left field. I also wasn't anticipating this. I mean, with the case of Abdeslam Ouaddou, what was happening around him and his employment status was the fact that he had a disagreement with Marumo, right, in terms of the salary that they'd agreed upon that he's going to be paid. Eventually was not the one that he was going to be paid, and then Marumo Gallants wanted to sign him to an extension, recognizing that he might leave and wanted to get compensation if he does leave, to which Ouaddou said, I'm not a player. I don't think I should be sold. Players are sold. You get money for them, but not for coaches. I'm not sure why he says that, because we've seen that around the world now that coaches are getting or rather clubs are getting a purchase fee to release coaches who are still in contracts. But he was then essentially unemployed, and Orlando Pirates have gone and picked him up. And it's so interesting that, right, where Marumo Gallants and Orlando Pirates and this coach are concerned, of course, Marumo, the team that shipped 8 by Orlando Pirates in December. But then by the time we saw them again against Orlando Pirates, as you mentioned, being coached by Ouaddou, they won that game. And then the final time we saw them against Orlando Pirates in the semi-final of the Nedbank Cup, I remember we were there in the stadium to watch that game, that Gallants just couldn't finish. But of course, it was at a time where Orlando Pirates were maybe fatigued from their exploits all over the show, being still in the semi-finals of the CAF Champions League and everything else that they'd done last season up to that point. But it feels as though there was a thing back in the day where Kaizer Chiefs were accused that if a player plays well against Kaizer Chiefs, they sign him, right? And this is what that feels like. That Orlando Pirates saw this coach who was coaching the team that they scored 8 against, beat them 8-1, suddenly be competitive and be better than them in those matchups. That, yeah, that's our guy, you know, and they went and they got him. And in terms of the expectations, who knows? Who knows? I mean, I also was expecting a bigger name signing. I was expecting a Rulani. I even suggested last week that Marcel Koller recently relieved of his duties at Al Ahly and everything that he did there when he was there. That would be a statement signing in terms of a coach, right? And what Orlando Pirates are planning to do with regards to Mamelodi Sundowns. This is not where I expected them to go. But when Jose Rivero came, I didn't expect that either. And Jose Rivero came here and famously was called a plumber because his CV was empty, right? But by the time he leaves Orlando Pirates, he's now coaching Al Ahly, and he's maybe in the hottest seat on the continent. So it might turn out that way for Ouaddou. I don't necessarily think it will. But we don't know, right? And we have to see him in the job. Does it translate in the same way? Because we were too quick to judge Rivero, and he made all of us eat humble pie. So maybe Ouaddou does the same thing. The one concern for me, Chuck, was the reports that the thing that hindered Orlando being hired was the fact that Orlando Pirates were insisting on keeping the technical team to support him that they have versus what Orlando wanted to bring himself, right? And if that's the case, we're going back to the days where Orlando Pirates were those rumors that who is choosing the Orlando Pirates squad, who's signing the players, you know, where we know there was a coach entrenched, but we also know that the powers that be were the ones who were making those decisions. So whenever you have institutions as big as Orlando Pirates, you don't full on want a yes man to be the coach. You want someone who's going to be able to push back and is going to be able to provide their own views in terms of what needs to happen with the team, particularly in the region or that just involves them and their coaching. This is why I believe Hugo Broos is successful at Bafana, right? Because we know Safa traditionally are not easy to deal with, but Hugo Broos is a man, from what when you hear him speak and how he's conducted himself with his time at the helm of Bafana, he does his own thing. And that's what you need. I do believe you need strong characters. We'll see if Ouaddou is that guy. I did expect Orlando Pirates to go in a different direction, but this is who they have now.
Yeah, I can't help but wonder. I mean, we were set here last week recording the possibilities or the potential of Pirates reuniting with Urulani. And in my mind, I'm thinking to myself that, you know, the famous saying that when your enemy makes a mistake, don't let him know, capitalize. And the parting of Rulani and Sundowns is not something that is a result of, well, some say that the bar is very high. There was no Champions League crown, so he was let go. It could be as simple as that, right? Or there could be a beef between him and Fleming Berg. But in my mind, what I'm trying to get at is that they were flying. They were good, Sundowns and Rulani. Had they kept together, they would have replicated what they're doing now with Cardoso. And when Sundowns and Rulani part ways, you want to get the cream of the crop. If it's not the players, if it's not the managers, you want to get the best in your arsenal, best in your team to make sure that you compete. And so with Rulani being available, for me, it was a no-brainer. You don't even discuss it. You get the man on board. What do you need? We've got the players, it seems. Do you need anyone else? How do we help you fortify this team so you can challenge for the league? Because when the Champions League gets again, and we can't then, because remember, in the first season that we were there with Rivero, we fell to Ijwaneng. We shouldn't have, but we fell to Ijwaneng. It's only the next thing that we fixed up our act and we got good because we had the potential, but never quite realized it. So early on, Ouaddou's going to be playing preliminary games and qualifiers, and even then he has to be sharp. Even then he has to start off the blocks and be good. Even then he has to start and chase Sundowns. Not chase, but keep up with Sundowns. That's how we got into a title race in the beginning, that we kept up with Sundowns. So if you drop the ball early on, back to square one. So for me, if the best are available, like you did with the strikers that are available with Mabasa, because Mabasa was scoring as far as you're like, well, you need to come back. And you found the talent in Mabasa was great. And there was arguably the midfield of the season from Pirates. Makaula, thank you. If Makaula was playing as well as he did for Amazulu, you bring him in and he proves to be very good. So you stick with what has seemed to be the best in the league. So Ouaddou did well for Gallants, but over Mangoba, over Pizzo, over Rulani, I don't know, man. But like we said, we don't know at this point in time what he brings to the party because it was a short stint, only 12 games, and with limited resources versus what Pirates can bring or what Pirates can offer the man. So, yeah, a bit underwhelming, a bit of a shock. But let's see what happens. As a Pirates fan, my fingers are crossed. I hope after 5 games we have 15 points, because if we don't, the same record plays again and again and again, and it's Mamelodi Sundowns who win the league. But Jay, looking beyond the technical team, right? Pirates have made a couple of signings. Kona Morem who's joined the ranks, confirmed to be joining the ranks, and someone who's I think would say confirmed to be official is Mbutuma. Those 2 signings, right? There's other rumors in terms of who might join the side, but those 2 we know are definitely in the bag. You look at the coaching hire and you look at these particular 2 signings. Are Pirates heading in the right directions with these particular signings?
It doesn't feel like it, Chuck. In the case of Mbutuma, I'll be very honest. Having watched him play at Richards Bay, and I realized that Richards Bay are a team that was struggling to create chances. He scored 6 goals in 27 games, and he's a forward. And I've not been convinced watching him at Richards Bay. He's certainly not the guy I would have thought in terms of, let me not say I've not been convinced, as though I don't think he's a PSL level player. But in terms of joining an Orlando Pirates, and if sitting here, the belief is that Orlando Pirates want to chase down Mamelodi Sundowns, having cut down the points gap in the league, at least from 23 points to then 12 points, and wanting to get even closer, maybe even overhaul Sundowns. I don't think Mbutuma is who you go for. But also, in terms of the needs of Orlando Pirates, Moremi is a good player, is an exciting player. And I think maybe that might be in preparation, considering where he plays, for Orlando Pirates to lose their star boy, right, in Erle Buhile Mufokeng. So as there's no like for like replacement for Mufokeng. He is an uber talent, but you can do worse than a Moremi. But in terms of the needs of Orlando Pirates as well, Chuck, I'm not convinced from that point of view, right? Orlando Pirates need reinforcements in the middle of the park. For sure. You need to get younger than Umakaula. You recently gotten parted ways with Utim, and you don't get anything from Jon Jones. He probably his time at Orlando Pirates has also probably come to an end, and essentially you have Umbata, in his prime and in that position. So you need players in that position. Also, you need a left back. We know Marco is gone. He's at Kaizer Chiefs now, and you have Ohoto, who has played as the left back countless number of times, but also he's in his mid-30s, and yeah, you need reinforcements over on that side. So I don't know, in terms of a striker, when you have Mabasa and Mahopa, maybe like the top teams usually have 4. Orlando, like Mamelodi Sundowns, they do as well. So if you bring him in to be third in that stack of strikers, okay, in that case, right? But again, considering that the goals are to overhaul a Sundowns who are putting up consistently 70 points in the league, is that what you're looking for? Or are you looking for players who are going to be ceiling raisers, who are going to come in there, and even the players that you think are good, they're going to come in and be better than them, and they will usurp those players in the starting 11, and those players who you thought to be good, then they form the depth, and now you suddenly have a strong squad. So yeah, I see these signings. I'm not all the way convinced that this is exactly what Orlando Pirates need. We'll see what they continue to do in the transfer market. But also, when I join it to the coach who recently signed on for Orlando Pirates, Yeah, it looks odds on that Mamelodi Sundowns will continue doing their thing, at least in the Betway Premiership.
I mean, but Masipera Jane, I'm thinking to myself, we're not shopping where we should be. But in terms of where I'd like us to shop in terms of Orlando Pirates and what we're trying to do on the continent, what we're trying to do the domestic league. Like I said, maybe Orlando costs more than Ouaddou. I don't know. I would like to think so with his stint at Sundowns, then going to Wydad. I think he's got a better CV, play coaching at the highest caliber, at the highest level. Sorry, but what can we do when Sundowns come back home with like 300 million rand?
Now nothing.
Nothing.
Now nothing. Like Sundowns exploits at the Club World Cup is gonna justify, like, literally by winning one game.
Yeah.
By winning one game, that first game against Ulsan, Sundowns got 36 million rand. That's
crazy.
What, 2 Jaden Adams signings?
That's crazy.
Just of winning one match. And as you say, like now, like 200 million in your back pocket. Oh, who knows what they continue to do at the Club World Cup. Yeah, there's not much the rest of the league can do. But but with the Orlando Pirates, Chuck, I feel like there's more Orlando Pirates
there's
could
more,
do.
Nah?
There's more. Like yes, Sundowns might get first dibs at the very best, but you can't sign everyone. You literally cannot sign everyone. So
at some point
the players who are good and are out there, I feel like Orlando Pirates should be going for those players, and they're not.
I mean, so addressing the players and also the manager, Jay, in my mind, I think it looks somewhat of a step backwards, because if you think about it, it looks like we're back to being vintage Pirates, where we sign a lot of players and then maybe 20% of those whom we signed are actually utilized or actually incorporated into the squad. Everyone else gets loaned out. Everyone else gets sold after a season of not really being able to break into the team. Which is my case in point, right, Jay? We have Mahopa, we've got Mabasa. They've interchanged very well and they bring different things to the party, as we've discussed. But behind them, there's also Ouaddou, who's had his stint with Bafana for Chen and stuff like Kosafa, sorry. And he hasn't quite broken through. He was that prodigal talent that was supposed to come through and shine after his stint at Cape Town Spurs, sorry. And you think to yourself, he's going to come through and play. He hasn't quite given us the numbers. And he's fairly similar to Mutuma when you look at his numbers at Cape Town Spurs. Mutuma comes in and is another squad player. So essentially, we're not doing any better than Umabasa or Mahopa, which I think we have to. We have to raise the ceiling at Pirates, because 12 points is a big gap. You have to. That's 4 wins. That's 4 more wins that we need in the season. So converting those draws into wins, number 1, and number 2, the tough matches against Sundowns convert, because it was 1 apiece. Imagine you get 3 points of Sundowns. If you get 3 more points of Sundowns, you're definitely there in there with a shout. So if you're not raising the level of goals in the team as far as the striking department is concerned, we haven't really taken a step up. When you look at the wingers, you've signed a plethora of wingers. There are players like Mulileki, who came through, I think, to play the last 2-3 games in the season, was loaned out. There's a player who went back to Arrows, if I'm not mistaken. I am Manja. I thought he'd be good, didn't quite crack it. There's Gilberto as well, who was loaned back to Petro, didn't quite crack it. So it seems like Pirates are gambling yet again, where we should be signing 2, 3, or 4 core players in terms of here's what we have and here's where we improve. That's how you build a team, because we've got a good core. And as you said, address the left back situation, address the middle of the park, address the striking department if you want someone who is more like Mabasa in terms of a box predator. So in terms of what we've done and what we could have done, so far, Jay, it's not filling me with a lot of confidence. I know Kona, who's from the player from Chipa. Remind me. Guaiba, yes. He's odds on to join. That's great. That's pushing the profile up in terms of the quality of the players in that particular position. But outside of that, Jay, so far, not really impressed. I mean, I'd argue even that Chiefs with Munyani have done better for their own team in terms of addressing problems than Pirates have with these 2 players.
Yeah, Chuck, we'll see. New coach, new players. Is it going to be the same old story for Orlando Pirates? We'll find out. A team that is cruising nicely over there in America, or maybe are they? Mamelodi Sundowns, as we spoke about the fact that they're collecting checks at the Club World Cup. They won their first match against Ulsan 1-0. Probably should have been more. And then in the game against Borussia Dortmund, lost that one 4-3. Being the last team to score in that game, in a very exciting game, and they've drawn rave reviews from around the world, right? That is Mamelodi Sundowns. Chuck, when you look back at the first 2 games, particularly the loss against Borussia Dortmund, is there something to be celebrated? And what do you make of the performances of Sundowns at this Club World Cup thus far?
I mean, Sundowns have positioned themselves in a place where the league is almost non-negotiable. The CAF Champions League win is high on their mandate. They have to win it at some point in the short term. So I don't think they come to the Club World Cup as a happy to be their side. Yes, it looks that way because they're a team from Africa. They're always happy to be there. It'd be great to rub shoulders with the great giants of European football, the Dortmunds, the Chelseas, the Real Madrids. But I think their mentality, yes, they are in that particular place because of where they are and who they are, relatively unknown to the world. But in terms of how they want to play football and how they view themselves, they're not there just happy to be there. And so when they can see that mistake by Williams and the ball goes in, you're like, oh, we've let them in. When they've had that goal scored by Kurasi at the far post, that header that goes into the back, you're like, oh man, we should be way better than where we are in this particular fixture. So when I look at their tie, Jane, I look at how they've played their football. Number one, against Ulsan, they were very dominant with the ball. They cut them up, they opened them up at ease. They did what Mamelodi Sundowns tend to do in the local league, which is something I didn't really expect because I thought to myself to be a bit more resistance, a bit more shape, a bit more discipline from the Ulsan. But Ulsan were at 6s and 7s, and Sundowns rightfully ripped them to shreds, but did not do so according to the scoreline because they scored just the one goal and there were lots of opportunities that were missed. Against Dortmund, Jay, that early goal by Rivero, when I saw that, I was like, see, we're not the only ones to get a goal considered by Rivero from our own half. It happens.
Rivero is the man who was coaching Sundowns, who was coaching Pirates. Ribeiro.
Sorry.
See, I also make the mistake.
It's only the second best player in the PSL, so it's a mistake.
He's not in the PSL. He's at the Club World Cup. Where are your champions? Where are your challengers?
In Spain. Prepping.
At the Club World Cup.
Like the Barcelonas of this world.
Like
the Liverpools of this world. But now some of us have got better things to do with our time.
Better things to do with your time.
To prep us.
Then try go be world champion.
Then fatigue our players further and start poorly.
All right.
Anyway, Ribeiro, thank you. Great solo goal, right? And that's the opening that gets Sundowns on a good start. And they kept the ball quite well. I mean, the other fact is, right, Dortmund was not at full strength, which, yeah, you want to argue that, but we lost anyway to a not full strength Man City, right? So chances are people feel it's not a strong side because they believe that they're good enough. And they weren't necessarily, the scoreline suggests that they won that game, but pound for pound, the display on the pitch, they're not necessarily weren't strong enough to do what they did. And they're almost made to eat those words, or rather that particular idea, to field a weakened side against Sundowns. Number two, the heat. I think Sundowns playing at Loftus, playing at Lucas Moura were better acclimatized in terms of playing in that heat.
Joe Bellingham, eh? Joe Bellingham, like, put that as one of the reasons why
they
struggled in that. It's like, as Europeans, we struggle with the heat, and they are probably used to it. And it's like, what are you talking about, brother? Joe Bellingham was probably he's never been to South Africa, so he can assume, he can make that assumption. He's never played, and Chuck, like. I mean, it's true. It's true. It's true. Like, yeah, Sundowns are better suited to those conditions. But I don't like that from Joe. Yeah, like Joe Bellingham, and yeah,
well, you have to say
he was
something.
Also talking about the fact that they should be proud. They did it. I was like, yeah, but not from you, Job.
Yeah, when I see that's the thing that I was saying at the beginning, that we should be proud. They should be proud, which they were close to beating Dortmund. Sundowns will look at themselves that way, which we should be proud to be here rubbing shoulders. Sundowns were going for the win. Sundowns were playing good football. And I mean, if it was not for Tashtek Matthews missing a couple of opportunities or making the right decision here and there, Sundowns probably go 3 up. And at that point in time, it's like almost game over, because Dortmund, yes, did score, but they never got to a point where you're like, oh man, Sundowns are 6s and 7s. They're just helpless against this onslaught from Dortmund. They keep coming. Nope. Sundowns fared quite well. Even after going 4 goals down, they kept coming and they kept trying to find a way, and they got 2 more goals, made it very tense and interesting at the very end there. So, Jay, what I make of Sundowns, that number one, I think they dealt very well with Ulsan. They were inferior opposition and they got dealt with. Number two, against Dortmund, who physically I saw, Jay, from the entrance of the players and their lining up, I was like, yeah, it's going to be a physical tussle. And you saw with the second goal by Kurasi, aerially, it's a mismatch. We just don't have the size of players to compete physically with those guys. But for them to score 3 goals, number one. Number two, to play their game and play it the way they wanted to against Dortmund. Because, yeah, I could say it's a second string side, or it's not necessarily their first team choice. But these are guys who are good enough to play for Dortmund. I think that's the fact that you want to put out there. They're good enough to play for Dortmund. They're good enough to play for a European powerhouse, quote unquote. But Sundowns almost did the business. So extremely proud in terms of what South African football looks like, what Sundowns football looks like, because what they were doing on the continent, if they can do it on the world stage and it looks like that, Looks good.
Yeah, Sundowns can have their heads held high. They still have an opportunity to qualify for the round of 16. We'll see what they do against Fluminense. But good win against Ulsan, considering that Sundowns had lost previously when they played against Asian teams in the Club World Cup. And to look that good against Ulsan was quite something. They should have buried that game, though. And then the game against Borussia Dortmund, I know we can do this for literally every single match in terms of these goals could have been conceded if like a million things had gone like in 8 million different ways, you know. But it does feel like that. I think especially as a Sundowns fan, you feel as though if you're gonna lose or if you're gonna concede 4 goals, you don't want them to go in like that, you know. There's the mistake by Ron Williams, which he mentioned that he saw Tebza and then Tebza suddenly wasn't there because it got a call from Marcelo Allende to move at the point where Ron was playing that pass, and then there's Ronan again with the parry that should not be maybe going into danger. You've got Utebza who is caught in possession. He scans better. Maybe there's a different outcome, or he passes the ball to one of his teammates that's facing him. That's a different outcome as opposed to try to turn in that position. And then you've got the own goal at the end by Umutao. And the thing is, Mudau, who we have said is maybe the best right back, maybe the best defender on the continent, right? Because of his spectacular plays in recovery. And that's the thing with Mudau. The reason he has those spectacular plays is because his spatial awareness is not good. His positioning is also not good at all. But his athletic ability is such that he's able to make up for those instances. But the thing is, playing against maybe higher tuned opposition in terms of a European team, what you saw with that own goal is what happens when he doesn't get there in time, because he was out of position again, and then he tried to make up the difference, but he didn't get there, and then the ball goes off of him, and it's an own goal. And you look at that and you feel, nah, man, you want to be beaten by different goals than that. You know, it feels as if those could have been preventable. And then when you look at the stats as well, like Sundowns did control the ball possession once again. They had more shots on goal and on target. They had a higher XG than Borussia Dortmund. For all intents and purposes, they were the better team. You know, except for we counted in the scoreline. But the fact that it is a scoreline of 4-3, and even when they continue to go down, they continue to score and to try fight back. The other standout thing for me is Miguel Cardoso. Questions. There are questions. There have been questions from his performance in the CAF Champions League final. He tried to lock the game against Ulsan way early, and Sundowns almost paid dearly for that. In the game against Borussia Dortmund, his subs, they leave you asking, why are you making those subs? Like, why are you taking off this player and putting on these players
for so
at that
long.
particular time? It doesn't. Yeah, his performances. I'm just like looking a little funny under the light there. But overall, Chuck, Sundowns, who we don't expect to go on and win the Club World Cup, I think they've shown on the world stage that they've come a long way, and it's great. And also, as pointed out by Pro Pilano, we spoke about this previously, that the performances of Sundowns will get the global football and the people who make decisions at maybe the higher institutions in the game to wonder about the league that this club comes from and the players where of that league, and maybe we'll get more eyes on our league and more of our players having great opportunities elsewhere other than just in the PSL.
Before we cut off this, I know you've had this thought, and I want to see, have you reviewed and have you thought differently? You wanted bigger and better opposition other than Dortmund, so that Sundowns have a bigger clash and there's more eyes on the particular game. Are you happy with this game and how it turned out, or would you have wanted a Chelsea or a PSG to be facing Mamelodi Sundowns in the second round?
Still would have wanted a bigger team. So because you are going to see Sundowns as they are, they're gonna play. And they're gonna come as who they are, right? For better or worse. And the thing is, if you do that against Real Madrid, or you do that against Manchester City, or you do that against Chelsea, what you've seen, like, that is reverberating around the global football community because of what Sundowns did against Dortmund, would be times 2, times 5, times 10. And as I'm saying, for me, it's like the FA Cup draws. You know how those small teams, like in those communities, like they celebrate like crazy when they get a draw. Whereby it's one of the big teams or United are coming to town. They don't expect to win that game. The fact though that they get to host like a Manchester United or a Liverpool right there in their small ground with their fans in there and just the eyes of the world like looking at them. For me, as I'm saying, I don't think Sundowns are there to win the Club World Cup. So in terms of the things that they can get from being at the tournament, I think there's a better overall outcome when you do the things that you're already doing against one of the more glamorous teams than a Dortmund.
Fair comment. With more eyes being on Sundowns, right? There is a talent who's loaned out from Sundowns to Ouaddou Athletic, and had a very good display against Manchester City, but didn't get it on score sheet. They lost that game, and effectively you could even say Ouaddou is out at this point in time. He finally gets onto the score sheet against Juventus, and that is Thembinkosi Lorch. Jay, one, how did he not cut it at Sundowns? Why was he not playing this brand of football? And number two, are people really now only coming to realize how good Thembinkosi Lorch is?
Nah, Chuck, I think to start with the second question, people have always known how good Lorch is. Maybe we have forgotten because we haven't seen Lorch at his absolute best in a while. And you asked the question, what happened at Sundowns? Upori Namaslay Queen. That is what happened at Sundowns. Like distractions, Chuck. Distractions, like off the field. One, injuries, right? Like he was very often injured, and I wondered to myself if those injuries were caused by his lifestyle. But he was often injured, and we didn't see him on the field. Not just at Sundowns, like prior to him coming to Sundowns, at Orlando Pirates as well in the latter times. And then the celebrity of being Lorch. Lorch has a song like in his name, you know, and he became that superstar, South African football superstar that transcends the game and enters into the domains of celebrity, and that fame can be a hard drug, you know. And I think all those distractions are things that took away from his time on the field and his performances, and therefore also in our memory banks we had forgotten how good Lorch is. I going back, we've been doing this podcast for a long time. In the season that Lorch did win the player of the year, I remember seeing him early, and I say to you that he's my candidate for the player of the year, you know. And I think even with Thembinkosi doing the things that he was doing at that point, that at his best in a particular season, I felt that Thembinkosi Lorch was the best player in the country, right? And then in the times where he was not seen on the field very much for Pirates, but then would come back for a stint now and again. Every time he played for Pirates, every time he came back, he was their best right wing, their best left wing, their best number 10, their best false 9. And the guy is uber talented. The guy is really, really good. And you see him now at Ouaddou, you know, like you just look at like Lorch's movement like on the field. Lorch moves like a star, Chuck. Lorch is star. I'm fine. Like Nyarshuti, the way he receives Ipola, the way Nyarshuti he runs with it, the way that he feels this confidence within himself that I'm gonna take a shot from the middle of the park, like Nyarshuti thinking ayiko. And the rest of us was asking the question back, what do you want me to do? Because Nyarshuti, I'm the guy, you know. And when he's fit and when he's focused, he's that dude. He's that dude.
Yeah, man. Unfazed by whether it's Juve, whether it's City, he's gonna play his ball, and his ball is of a very, very high level. I kept thinking to myself when I was watching that game, this is what Lani was saying all the time in those training videos. This is the Nyoso I know, and this is what he wanted to bring to Mamelodi Sundowns. Unfortunately, like you said, injuries aside and all these other things, he just couldn't put it together when he got that game time. But when you look at him at this particular level, Jay, I'll tell you this, right? As a Pirates fan, and maybe this is just me, right? I did appreciate Thembinkosi Lorch, but in all of that, right? Before the song, before these things, there was this thing about Pirate stars. She's about when it matters. He'll convert 1 out of 3 chances, 1 out of 4. And you're like, he could be doing so much better. He could be doing this and that, and he does put his game together, right? And then there's the off the field stuff to a point where you're like, we don't need Lorch anymore. And so he hasn't necessarily received his flowers all the time because there's always been something with Lorch, like you said as well. Tupori, it's the girls, it's the fame. And at Ouaddou, or at least in this club setting, in the country that he's playing in, it's just football. And when you can focus on just football, what a talent. What a good player that we have in front of us. And so, man, it's a great reintroduction to us who've forgotten. Because, yeah, man, to be honest with you, Abdeslam quickly, because of late, it was him getting game time after game time from Murulane and not really producing the goals. And you're like, is this the Thembinkosi Lorch? Then him struggling and then eventually getting loaned out. This is what we see here. This is good football. What we see here is this is what you talk about. You like South Africans play good football because that's the idea we have as fans. Well, we still, I think we still do believe this. We're Brazilians light because we've got the samba. We just don't have the goals. We don't have the wins to back it up. But we've got the Polanyana. So on the world stage, for him to be in a foreign team and to be a South African talent that does that, that's dope.
Yeah, it feels as though he's just focused on the game because as well we know the nature of the country that he plays in, the amenities that he enjoys here at home. And
there's no conquer there.
Maybe players like Sipombula could benefit from leaving the comforts of home and going to Indaola. No, we don't do that here. But then, Chuck, moving to overseas to the Premier League, Manchester United in focus. Right, the Premier League fixtures were announced, and so the first 5 games for Manchester United. Mm-hmm. They opened the campaign at home to Arsenal, and they're away to Fulham. They're at home then to newly promoted Burnley, who had the best defensive record in the Championship last season. Then it's the Manchester derby away from home, and then it's Chelsea. 3 of those top 4, that is Arsenal, City, and Chelsea, of course, Champions League teams. And then, as I mentioned, the newly promoted team, and then away at a Fulham who they did beat, did the double over twice, but a Fulham who were good against top opposition teams, of which I suppose United weren't. But Chuck, first 5 games, is this something United need? Is it going to light that fire from the get-go that they need to perform, like get out of the blocks quickly? Or do you think this is something that might actually scupper the season before it even starts?
I mean, yeah, it's quite hectic. City, Chelsea, Arsenal. That's a big ask, right? But I think, right, it's unlike the Ten Hag thing where the first couple of games were Brighton and Brentford and we got hammered. I think this is a great litmus test that at home against Arsenal, how good are you? How far are you, right? Even if everyone's not at the races, not everyone is going to be at full power in game number 1, but they're well on their way to being there because by the time you get to game number 4 and 5, your number 1 is already at the top of the league, and chances are the guys who are going to continue in the top 4, most of them are already in that space, in and around that place. So I guess it's a good start against Arsenal. The trouble is in, which is not just Arsenal, right? There's City after that. There's Chelsea after that. There's, as you said, a Fulham who can be tricky. And the only easy game, if you want to even argue, is maybe Burnley because Championship sides tend to be obviously a lot weaker when they come to the actual Premier League. So it's a tester, Jay. But the guy promised us that we're going to be much better. He sees good days ahead. He said we want to see a lot of suffering. Suffer we did. But one, they're not at the Club World Cup. They must be practicing. They must be getting to grips with the ideology or the system of play. And number 4, there's a Matthias Cunha since joined the ranks. I don't know what's holding up the Brian Mbumo signing, but I think that could happen as well.
I think Thomas Frank wants his man over at Spurs, and Spurs might be willing to pay more money than United are willing to part ways with.
But it's the pool. I tell Thomas Frank, it's the pool. Boy, Mbumo's coming as well.
But then if Brentford are like, hey, you guys are offering 55 million, whereas Spurs are wanting to add 15 million on top, yeah, he's not going there.
So rather, let's say we have both those signings. That increases our firepower exponentially. Like we become so much better. And it's a matter of what do we do then in midfield to be competitive? Because I think against Arsenal, we're inferior competitive. We're inferior in terms of midfield competition. Same way with City, same with Chelsea. And so you wonder, and so it's a tough start, Jay. And I think to myself, if we get out of there with 2 wins and a draw, I'm happy. It's a tough start because after that is smooth sailing. So for me, it's a tough start. It could scupper us, but if we go out there with at least 7 points, I know it's not enough. 7 over 15, 7 points, Jay, with like a relatively easy run after that. I'd take that.
What are you talking about?
7 wins.
No. What are you talking about? Like in the space of 30 seconds, you just said smooth sailing and you said easy. Who are we talking about here? We're talking about Manchester United. Because, yes, the fixtures will turn. But a team that finished in 15th, right?
Yeah.
In 15th place, Chuck, you wanna then look at the other teams and the other fixtures, and you're gonna use the term smooth sailing.
Yeah,
Easy
because
for Manchester.
We're not supposed to be there. They know it as well. When we get back, like I said, when we get back to who we are, when Bruno is working and Casemiro proved to be decent, when we've got Mateus Cunha, we've got Ahmad back, and we've got we've got the potential to do exactly as I say. Yes, it hasn't happened.
Let me tell you what exactly is going to happen then if you have a terrible start in those first 5 games. The fans are going to turn. Like it's the off season right now. And the emotions of Manchester United fans are a little dour, or rather in terms of they're not the flames are not engulfing everyone as they did like at the heights of the terrible performances last season. Because it's the off season. Mm-hmm. You're not watching Manchester United week in, week out, break your heart and disappoint you and give you a sense of here we go again, as they tended to do. And so like there's a calm, Chuck, is what I'm saying. But the moment it starts looking like it did before, you know what is going to happen, that those Manchester United fans are going to not be patient with what they're watching. They're not going to be thinking about, man, there's a turn of fixtures coming around the corner and it's going to be smooth sailing or it's going to be easy. It's going to be chaos once again. And that thing, it feels like, Chuck, those feelings, they seep into the team, like, and everything that is happening at Manchester United. So I am afraid for United in terms of those first 5 fixtures, because
do you think they're season defining?
The Champions League, Chuck.
Do you think they're season defining?
I think they can be. And
if we falter
I also
very
say this,
badly,
Chuck, as an Arsenal fan, I was somebody who was like, well, you get to play everybody anyway, so it doesn't matter who you start with. You know, that's what you. After last season, I know for a fact, like, nope. You want to ease your way into a campaign, Chuck. You want to have fixtures whereby you feel as though you can win them, because even going into them before anything happens, right? Which is where you are coming from, I believe, that it's smooth sailing, because you haven't seen any of these teams, right? I mean, you would have used the same language around Nottingham Forest last season before the season started, but as the season goes, then you realize, okay, this is actually a tough fixture. But before that happens, yes, on paper it is what it is, and that's what you want going into the season. Before we see how everybody is performing, you have that confidence within yourselves, and maybe that is also enough to get you over an opponent who maybe is actually tougher than what you thought. But because within your own mind, the mindset that you go into that game with is that we are supposed to be dominant, or we're supposed to be better, we're supposed to win, and it translates in terms of your performance. So I do believe you want to ease your way into a league campaign, get those victories, those points, those performances under the belt, and then you go into the tougher fixtures with a self-confidence that is built from what you've already done on the field of play. You go out there and say you lose the first game against Arsenal. That's at Old Trafford. It's the first game. And then you go away to Fulham, who were strong last season, but I did mention United did the double over them. You would hope that you win that. If that's a draw, now you're coming back at home against Burnley, and that's a must win, you know. And Burnley are going to come there and they're going to be defensive stalwarts in the same way that they did in the Championship. I believe they're going to double down on that, and it maybe is then a hard game. United struggle to score. Maybe they do win. And then you go back to back, Derby, Chelsea, you lose those games. Say, now it's a situation whereby you're sitting with like 2 points or something in the first 5 games.
See, that's the thing, Jay. It's that outlook that you think that we're going to be horrible yet again. And I know, yes, our league position, we finished in 50th, and suggests that not too great,
because,
right?
Chuck, the evidence tells me that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, but that's an anomaly. I get you going on evidence, but how often have Man United finished in those places versus the teams that are above them? How often have Forest gone into the Europa League? How often have Forest bothered anyone? How often has Burnley replicated their form from the league in the champion in the actual Premier League? It hasn't quite happened. Okay, so for me, Jay,
Chuck,
here's what I'm saying, right? Number one, say Mateus Cunha is there. Say Mbuma gets over the line, right? We've got Ahmad back. That gives us at the very least 20 more goals. At the very least 20 more goals. Number one. Number two, the off season that I'm talking about and the philosophy that fixes a lot of the defensive holes, because that's what United were poor at, being very porous. Yes, we were struggling in terms of goals. We scored that one goal and we looked like it was close. We concede one, our heads drop, or there's too much space or too many chances being conceded. We concede another one and we lose that game. If we then at least hold out and we concede half the goals that we concede, which is not necessarily like a record number in terms of our defensive numbers. Say we only concede 30 goals versus the number that we conceded prior. We're in with the shout, Jay, not to win the
Yeah,
championship.
you're talking about the season.
Not to win the. Yeah?
You're talking about the season. I'm talking about like those first 5 games. And what you are talking about is, yes, that gradual like improvement. And maybe you do get an extra 20 goals like from Mbeumo and Acuna and whoever else like is on there, right? But I'm saying that kind of that hope that you have can be predicated by the fact that we got a chance to get these players to acclimatize and to get the performances there, and that everybody feels comfortable in the system or in the second year of the system and everything else that has happened in preseason. But what I'm saying is, if that is knocked at the very beginning, you might not even get the opportunity to see the best of. And I would have preferred, if I'm a Manchester United, I would have preferred not to have this kind of start, because as I'm saying, like, it's an Arsenal who finished like twice in second place 3 times in a row. You know who Manchester City are, and you see their reinforcements that they've added and continue to add. Chelsea as well come into this season having qualified for the Champions League, and you imagine that they're also going to be better. So United don't start any of those games as favorites. They like, or
the 3 listed.
Those 3 games.
Okay,
those 3 games. They don't start any of those 3 games as favorites. And against Fulham, I'd say it's 50-50, Chuck.
Even though according to the stats that you're bringing up, we did a double over them.
Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't like blow away victories, right?
Yeah.
But and it's away from home. There's also the fact that it's away from home. That's what I'm also taking into account, that that's an advantage to the teams who are playing at home. So it could get terrible. It could be great now, right? It could be great now, like, because say United like surprise all of us, which is possible, and they go away from those 5 games with like 12 points, whatever the case may be. Now you're looking at a season whereby, okay, this is going to be very good. But the likelihood when you look at those teams on paper is that it's not going to be good. And I feel that before the end of, I don't know when the 5th game is played, but I think maybe before the end of September, we're going to be having conversations around like, is he the guy?
I'll say this right in parting. Number 1, I think, Jay, you don't have to beat, I don't know whose record was poor in the top 6, but they themselves were in the top 6 and they were great because they beat everyone else. You don't have to beat everyone in the top 6 to have a decent season, and decent in the context of who United are right now against the teams that you just listed, Arsenal, City, and Chelsea. So by that I mean, Jay, if we're good enough where we lose and there's a heartily performance where we're like, okay, it was close, or we give them a good run for their money, then it's very different versus we were open the entire time. They were toying with us the entire time. If that happens with Arsenal, that happens then again with City, that happens then for the 3rd time against Chelsea, that's horrible. But if we lose and it's narrow and we're competitive in 3 of those games, but there's no victory, then I'm like, okay, there's something there, because what we need to do business against is the Leeds of this world, is the Wolves of this world, the Crystal Palaces of this world. Not so much so can you beat City and Arsenal. I don't think that's the question that can be answered with a positive yes.
Like,
not at this point in time.
Projecting over the season, I'm with you. If you're projecting over the season,
that's why I get to that's why I get to if it's close in the first 5.
And I'm saying that the ability to win those games that you say you should win could be affected by how you do in those first 5
but
games.
What if we're close, like I'm saying, in those first 5? What if we show competitiveness? What if what if we're like football. A Sundowns where you're like, okay, they outperformed Chelsea this game, but they're on the wrong side of the scoreline.
You very well could be.
That is still
I'm not anticipating that you will be, though. As I'm saying, like, if it doesn't happen,
rather,
if the record is terrible in those first 5 games, I fear for what will come from Manchester United.
My final question is this. Rather, right? You're not saying, obviously, United, you're not thinking that they're going to beat Arsenal or City or Chelsea. Are you expecting them to come close and be competitive against those sides in the first 5? That's my question. Because if we can be competitive, then for me, that's enough, because we're playing the who's of the league. And then against everyone else, what we've seen there was promise, and there was
United
a fight.
To be better than last season.
Which is still a horror time in the first 5 games.
I'm not... I won't say I expect them to lose all those games, but I'm saying that I would have rather, if I was choosing as Manchester United, coming off of the season that we've come off of and everything that comes before that, and in terms of what we're trying to do, that is not the first 5 games I would have chosen for myself, because I think it gives potential to actually ruin the rest of the season even.
I mean, for me, Jay, if you're Arsenal and you don't win your first five, or rather you're surprised in terms of how poorly you've done in the first five. If you're City, I think that matters a lot because you guys are trying to win the league. If you're Man United, if we're being realistic, Man United top 8 is great. Man United being consistent is great. United going deep in the FA Cup because of who we are right now.
I think United are getting 4 points in those first 5 games, Chuck.
I say 7.
We'll see how it goes.
All right, Jay. We're thinking about what happens at the start of a particular season or the start of the campaign. Someone who's at the back end, or rather who's concluded at least his time with the UFC. We don't know if he's officially retired from MMA because there are rumors between him and Ngannou. There might be a fight. Asaz. Jon Bones Jones has called time on his career at the UFC as officially putting down the crown at heavyweight, having begun his career at light heavyweight and run through the gauntlet, went through the entire campaign as a light heavyweight unbeaten, went to heavyweight still unbeaten. But Jay, how it's ended, right? There's rumors of him ducking Tom Aspinall. There was a lot of inactivity. He came back to win the title against Cyril Gane, which is what made him heavyweight champion. Then there was more inactivity. Then got to fight Stipe, who was 40 plus. But outside of that, Jay, in the last 3, 4, 5 years, we didn't see much of Jon Jones. When you look back at his legacy, do you think those years and the rumors or the claims and the idea that he was stacking Tom Aspinall, do you think this hurts his legacy? Or if you look back at him and you say, well, at the end of the day, he was pound for pound one of the greatest, left the game still at the top in terms of the pound for pound rankings, and was ultimately unbeaten.
Jon Jones had nothing to prove before he even got into the heavyweight division. In terms of what he did all the way up to light heavyweight, had he stopped his career at that point, already the general consensus is that he's the GOAT. You know, you don't then suddenly go from that to then your legacy is tainted because you didn't fight a Tom Aspinall. Now, do I think Jon Jones is ducking Tom Aspinall? I don't know, because I don't know why he would be, unless in his heart of hearts, he really does believe that particular guy is the guy that he stands no chance against and he's going to be embarrassed by him and he doesn't want that to happen. Because even if he went out there and he lost to Tom Aspinall, I don't think he would be embarrassed. And even if he lost, Chuck, it would not move the needle in terms of, oh man, this is not exactly who we thought Jon Jones is, like as I'm saying, his legacy is set in stone. Now, would I have loved to see him fight Tom Aspinall? Yes, especially because Tom Aspinall keeps speaking about Jon Jones, and Tom Aspinall before the official retirement said that he retired Jon Jones, and for that alone, Jones should like be in the ring and slap him silly in his mouth. But that's not likely to happen now. Jones seemingly is riding off into the sunset, or maybe into a fight with somebody else, something else that he wants to do. He did say that he wants a few money at this stage of his career. And yeah, you measure those things as a fighter, like the money that you get versus the damage that you are likely to suffer. Jon Jones, over the course of his career from when he was 21, winning world titles right up until this point where he's pushing 40, has never been a man who's backed down from anyone. There's never been anybody who stepped into that ring and come out and said that they're better than Jon Jones. And that's why, on that basis alone, Chuck, like, why would I look at like this one situation and think to myself, yeah, that's his boogeyman. That's the man who he feels is under his bed when he turns the lights off in his bedroom at night. No, I don't think that's the case. And as a result, I don't think that he's ducking Tom Aspinall. It's not a good look because of the timing, But at the end of the day, when we look back on Jon Jones' career, that is not even one of the things like that's going to come up, or that should come up when you speak about his legacy. Yeah, but Tom Aspinall is just a footnote in the legendary career of Jon Bones Jones.
I have an interesting take where I side with you, but I've got detractions like from the legacy, because when the UFC was, not to say in obscurity, but when it was starting to gain traction and starting to become bigger, that's when Jon Bones Jones joined the organization, and he went against the Lyoto Machida, the Rashad Evans, and the who's in the light heavyweight division. And he got his crown and he got the belt, and he built his legend off that hard work, of him being ruthless. Because people say that in the ring, that's another man altogether, because he's got bad intentions. And you see it because he's the guy who throws vicious elbows. Who's the guy who played Mr. T in the A-Team? Get his name. But there's this kick that Jon Jones had on his knee, like a stomp to his knee. And he says he believes that should be illegal, because that's potentially career ending. I'm like, but you guys kick each other in the face, so what do you mean that should be illegal? But that's the side of Jon Jones' game there. When he comes into the ring, he becomes very vicious and becomes almost hard to beat. And at this point in time, no one did beat him. So when you look at that body of work, Jay, and the fact that he was unstoppable, yes, he had close calls with Dominic Reyes, a close call with Gustafsson. Here's my thing, Jay, that when the UFC finally got into the mainstream, when they signed their contract with ESPN, when they became mainstream, for me, I only saw Santos, Reyes. I only saw about 4 fights that got Jon Jones legit that were happening live. And since then, he's been inactive. Since then, he's been making up weight to get to heavyweight. Since then, he's been fighting Cyril Gane, Stipe, who's 40. And so my real-time legacy of Jon Jones is tainted. What the body of work where he was collecting the belts, where he's the guy who's got the most title fights, where he's in most of those fights, he's been defending his own belt. I wasn't there. I wasn't seeing those things. The selection that I heard about, caught up to, and when I finally started to watch, I'm like, okay, against Reyes, it was close, but good work. Against Gustafsson, good work. Against Santos, it was close, but good work. Against all the other guys, good work. And then comes this era, Jay, where I'm like, okay, now I'm clued in. Now I'm plugged into UFC. This is what I'm about. When Conor McGregor has come and gone, when Habib has come, Amanda Nunes, when stars have been built, this is what Jon Jones is for me. And I'm like, nah, man, I would have wanted more of that legacy. And so for me, that inactivity of like 3 years, one fight. And then there's this thing, will he, won't he, with Tom Aspinall. And you're like, dude, just tell us, you want to fight or you don't want to fight. So the organization can keep moving on. So here's the thing here with me, right? Jones earned all the accolades, all the praise, all the treatments that he's gotten from the UFC. But it became too soft in terms of, where's Jon Jones? He's not fighting, but he's pound for pound number one. But he's not been fighting. Habib has been fighting. Islam has been fighting, but Jon Jones is number one. Okay, Jon Jones has to defend his title because in MMA, the record that Jon has is an anomaly because everyone at some point gets beat because everyone fights everyone. Jon Jones was fighting everyone, and Jon Jones got the accolades, got the belts, got the praise, got to be pound for pound number one. But they got to a time where he was the golden child, and he could do no wrong, that he was not fighting, but it was pound for pound. He is the champion. Tom Aspinall is the interim champion, which is not necessarily a title because you're the guy in waiting. So Jon Jones comes back, but he's not fighting Tom Aspinall. He's fighting Stipe. Jon Jones comes back, but he's not. He's rumored to be fighting or rather negotiating to fight Tom Aspinall. It never happened. So for me, largely what I've witnessed in real time, not matched the legend of Jon Jones. So for me, Jay, it does take a little bit in terms of the shine. The overall picture, the bigger picture, I was not a part of it. And yes, that is great. That is amazing. But as far as I've been watching this particular legend, Jon Jones, nah, man, there's something there that's a bit incomplete.
Chuck, that sounds like the arguments against Pele being one of the greatest, just because people didn't watch him, and have those opinions, or how the football seems to have started with the advent of the Premier League. There was football before that, and the way we judge. Sounds like to me, Chuck, you feel as though Jon Jones didn't give you the performances you needed him to give you. Hopefully,
we're waiting for 3 years.
We see him have some matches then against Ngannou, and then we can come here and I can ask you, like, are you more satisfied with how this ended? Well, hopefully you are satisfied with how this ended, because this is the end of this particular episode of 2UpFront. If you are new here or you are returning and you've not yet done so, please do press that subscribe button. Please do like the content, share it far and wide, and also do share your thoughts in the comment section. We absolutely love hearing from you. And beyond the comment section as well, you can find us across all social media platforms, and it is at 2UpFront Pod. I am at J_Mzulu. Chuck is at Chuck 2Up. From me and the 200 million that's coming back from America. Adios.
Sundowns put the world on notice. Now the world knows who they are. Paris fans, let's get familiar with the name Abdeslam Ouaddou. Let's get
familiar.